All right, welcome back to another episode of the IDS Podcast, and I'm here again, season one and season two now.
Yeah.
You're our only recurring guest in this season.
That's it.
Dean Camastro, what's up, Dean?
Hey, how you
welcome
doing, Brian?
back.
Thank you.
And
thanks for having me back.
last time we were here, you were the sitting president of IDS Long Island.
Yes.
You are no longer the sitting president, so I guess formally I can thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you.
It's good to have that
Yeah.
off your chest a little.
Yeah.
Not
Well,
off your chest, but it's
you
get a little
take
more time back.
you take the past president role now, so
Yes.
there is still some participation for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's a great transition, with the organization because it allows you to have a new person come in, which is Melissa Pollock. She's
Yeah.
the new current president, and it gives me the opportunity for 2 years to kind of oversee it, make sure everything transitions well. She understands the ins and outs of the association. So you're still involved.
Exactly.
And I'm glad to be nonetheless. But yeah, so it's a little bit more of a back seat when it comes to every day.
Okay, so you have a couple more minutes on your hand
Yeah,
every week.
that's it.
Cool, and you're also the Northeast
Regional
sales rep for
manager.
Duravit.
Yeah,
I wanted
for
to
Duravit.
make sure I got
Yeah.
your location
Of
correct.
course.
I mean, we are in the Northeast. I figured as
Yeah.
much, but Northeast sales rep for Duravit. And we're going to talk. Some crossover in what we talk about today.
Sure.
We'll obviously go into Duravit and their role in the sustainability, which is the topic of discussion today.
Yep.
And I know nothing about sustainability, so it's a good thing you're here. But in the same sense, I mean, I have a camera that has a shelf life of about 3-4 years, and
Sure.
then it's junk. So
Yeah.
what I do doesn't really pertain necessarily to sustainability. But we're going to talk about sustainability, and more particularly in the bathroom. And I think that's why you're a perfect fit, because most of the products that you do sell through Duravit are pretty much bathroom-related products.
Yeah, it's all bathroom products. Yep.
So that being said, I mean, and I kind of just touched upon it, but why is the bathroom, when you're talking about putting a house together, why is the bathroom the most talked about, or should be the most looked about location when you're talking about sustainability and building a new home?
Sure. Well, I mean, the biggest thing is the water usage, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you think about a home or the built environment, it is the one room in the house that uses the most, I would call, utilities, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, not is it only water, but you have your septic waste, which has got to go through 2 treatment plants. Yeah. You have your hot water heating unit in the bathroom, which is now going to operate based on that water usage. So really, the biggest thing is water usage.
And
sure.
gas, too,
Yeah,
usually.
and of course, exactly. Depending on what
Yeah.
you have. In my home,
Exactly.
I have natural
Yeah.
gas. So I have a hot water heater. Technology kind of changes that over time, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But from a usage of energy overall, it's water mainly, and then followed up by the other things that I had just mentioned. So it is a room that I think today people are more and more conscious of in using sustainability design and also sustainable products, right, overall. So that's probably the single biggest part of the sustainability aspect is water. And as you could see in the news today, there's quite a lot of water issues throughout the world. From even here in New York, we had some droughts last year based on the amount of rain or lack of rain. Therefore, so if you think about water as a whole, it's the most important thing to sustainability.
Yeah,
in the bathroom.
That's what I was going to ask you about, is the environmental impacts that some of those things do have on the environment. And,
Sure. Yeah.
The water, and you spoke about droughts and stuff like that. So what kind of, if you have products that are not necessarily sustainable, what kind of environmental impacts do we have, or can we see?
Oh, you're gonna, again, if you're not, right, you take a bathroom from the past, I call it, right? And if you look at the water usage, where just when I was a contractor just 15 years ago, you had 5-gallon-a-minute shower heads. You had faucets that were 3 or 4 minutes. You had toilets that were flushing 2 gallons of water at every usage. So if you think about just in a very short period of time that I've been in the industry now, 27 years in total with my construction background, to see the change in the sustainable aspect of the bathroom space, it's dramatic. I mean, if you think about just the shower head in itself, right? We just use that as an example. You have a 5-gallon shower head brought down to today, code is 2-gallon. We're seeing 1.75. We're even seeing 1.5-gallon shower heads, which, yes, it affects a slight bit of the performance, but at the end of the day, really what happens is you're just saving tons and tons of water. If you think about say an average home of 4 people, right? At 5 gallons a minute, the average shower is 8 minutes. At 5 gallons, so that's 40 gallons of water.
Yeah.
One person. Now times that by 4.
Yeah.
So now you're at, what is that? 160 gallons.
Yeah.
Just showering alone. Now
Daily.
times that daily. Now times that by how many millions of homes are on the island.
Yeah.
Just the island alone. Now think about the country. So
Yeah.
you're talking about the savings of trillions of gallons of water just from a 5 gallon to a 2 gallon.
2 gallon.
Trillions. If everybody in the country today just said, okay, I'm taking a 2 gallon a minute shower head and installing it, we would literally save trillions of gallons of water daily.
That's insane.
Daily. Which is, that point in itself is mind-boggling. But, the good thing is, from an industry's perspective, we're seeing a lot of consumers concerned about the sustainable design of their bathroom. It's not the manufacturers like us leading the charge, and we are. We're making a lot of conscious decisions in how we manufacture our products, but we are seeing a huge uptick in the consumer and the education and the need for a sustainable design, which is great. And it's not everybody, and I really believe, like for me, I've always felt that it starts with the individual. I think an individual really wants to be conscious or needs to be conscious to really adapt that, because you're going to pay more, right? That's always the stigma.
Yeah. Well, they also have to know to be conscious, and we'll talk about that later also in educating the consumer. But,
yeah. So again, built environment, bathroom, water consumption is number one, and then everything that follows behind it, as I mentioned earlier. And even getting down to the materials that are in the bathroom. You got out a bathroom, some of these older bathrooms, they have cast iron in there. They're using products where maybe the gypsum board from years ago has a little bit of asbestos in it. There's all these different things. That's got to get ripped out and put out into a landfill.
Copper or brass piping even.
Copper, brass piping, all of it. So, it has an effect across the board from installing a sustainable bathroom today using sustainable products from the ground up really changes the entire aspect of a bathroom as a whole, really.
Cool. And do you find that consumers, and you kind of touched upon it, and I think a lot of it, like we said, is based on education, but do you find that consumers are actually requesting that? And both from a commercial standpoint and a residential, because commercial buildings even more so. I mean, the type of water, we're talking about just water, and we'll talk about some other things later. The type of water these commercial buildings produce or waste or whatever on a daily basis is just insane.
Well, the interesting thing there, right, I've felt that, and we're seeing it more and more today's, multi-unit residential high-rise buildings, like we're in the city, or apartment complexes here on Long Island, we are seeing the developers being conscious of it. And that kind of starts on the architectural side of things. And the architects today, I'd have to say now more than ever, as a manufacturer, we're getting requests constantly about information about how our products are made, the sustainability of them, the longevity of them, their life cycles, everything like that. And I think what's beginning to happen is you're seeing the government or banks incentivizing developers to create sustainable and healthy buildings, right? And once that happens, that kind of changes the game. Now they could borrow money better, if they have enough green space. You're seeing a lot of high-rise buildings, there's rooftop green space. They're putting a lot of amenities that are geared towards sustainability built into the buildings as well. And you have a few developers that are really even concentrating on building nothing but what they're calling a healthy building, which is everything all the way down to the bottom. Top to bottom, from the bricks that they use to the filtration systems to the use of reuse of gray water, right? Gray water buildings. Really, high rises are a real good source of using gray water reuse. It's a little bit more difficult.
Well, basically, because I'm not familiar. So people that are
we're bouncing around a little bit, but so gray water use is the ability to take rainwater, let's say some regular water coming out of a faucet, water that doesn't need to be treated, but that can be reused somewhere in the environment. You're seeing most of it be for irrigation systems, right? Rather than taking rainwater or regular water from a source and pushing it out. They're keeping it in a localized container and then using it for the
mini
irrigation. Reservoir type of thing. So that's the first big residential side of it. The gray water reuse in multi-unit residential is a bit more intricate because they're able to do other things with that water outside of just using it for irrigation. But primarily right now on the residential side, it's being used for irrigation systems. So the more those type of technologies come on board, the less expensive it'll be to do, right?
Yeah.
Just like anything, right? You talked before about with your cameras, like, in 3-6 months, it's a technology thing, so you have to move on to the next technology.
Yeah, exactly.
I think here, in the instance of the built environment for the bathroom, you're talking about technologies that are just allowing manufacturers to make the product less expensively than it is today and still remain sustainable. So you're going to probably pay 30 to 35% more if you're going to design a truly sustainable bathroom. However, a good designer can talk to their client about the cost savings that goes into it.
I was about to say, but that's up front. I mean, I feel like that 30% you might pay more up front you'll get that back, if not more.
Reap the benefits
over
of it. Absolutely.
The savings in water, the savings of electricity, the savings of everything else.
Absolutely.
Gas or electric, if you have that, whatever it is, over the course of a bathroom is what, 20 years, give or take?
Well,
so
it's funny.
Another conversation. Longevity.
Yeah, longevity is there. However, unfortunately, we've watched that life cycle come down. So yes, years ago, bathrooms and kitchens were anywhere from 17 to 20 years. Kitchens are still about 15. We're seeing bathrooms creep down all the way to about 10 or 11. So,
but is that?
I think it's a design.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's not because of product.
Yeah,
I think
it's just a design thing. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Designs change and design trends change so rapidly now.
Agreed, and that's why we always talk about, for us as a manufacturer, a lot of what we do is transitional, and we call it that because it should last a lifetime, right? In the way we perceive design in our products. And the unfortunate thing is, and I say this because I have a couple of millennials now, my kids are into just that constant change, right? And I use this a lot in my conversations with the industry where, my son and my daughter-in-law are now working on their third couch in 5 years, right? Because it's that mentality of them, pay a little bit less because I'm only going to have this for a year or two because I'm going to go get something else because I'm going to want something else. Yeah. So it's tough sometimes, that type of client, with that type of mindset, to say, hey, let's design and build something that's going to last forever if we want it to, right? So again, as that sustainable thing becomes not just a term or the new hot thing, it stays, and I think it will at this point, you are just going to see the ability to design that bathroom just come down in price and in cost. But as you mentioned, it's an upfront cost, and I look at it as, for myself, I feel I'm pretty sustainable. Just remodeled my bathroom last year, and already my savings, just in a year's time, is astronomical. So
just on water consumption,
I went way far. So when I bought my house 5 years ago, I redid all the electric LED lighting. Yeah. I started from the heart of the home. I put in a high efficiency gas AC heat combo. Right, I started there because that kind of takes everything. I have a water efficient hot water heater. I didn't go all the way to the Navian that's out there today, which is water on demand. But I went with a regular one gas, but then I went solar panels after that, right? So now my energy costs are
just down
next to nothing. I generate more energy out of my solar panels than I use through the entire year. So, and that in itself, again, it becomes, sustainability is not just a term or, you're going to design one space in your house in a sustainable manner. You got to kind of be sustainly across the board, right?
As much as you can.
Yeah, as much as you can, even all the way down to the way you recycle your products, right? Yeah. Interestingly enough, I have a lot of friends, unfortunately, that when I go to their houses, they don't even recycle their glass and plastic. It drives me out of my mind. But, so it goes back to, like I mentioned, mindset, right? At the end of the day, the right consumer who's really conscious about the environment, wants to really, create a sustainable living space, will do so and pay the extra money because there's that understanding. But, people like us as manufacturers, our reliance is on educating the community, educating the designers that specify our products so that they can talk to their customer and get their customer to understand the value, not just from a sustainability aspect, but from a monetary aspect, because it will pay itself back in the long run, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Cool. We touched upon products. You were talking about the shower heads,
Yep.
and in a bathroom you have, low flush versus dual flush,
Yep.
and all that stuff. What other products are out there that can help? And I'll kind of extend this beyond bathrooms, maybe to kitchens too, because bathrooms pretty much have shower, toilet, and sink.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe even extend this part of the conversation a little towards kitchens. But what products are out there to try to focus on that environmental savings or sustainability across the board?
Well, listen, just in design as a whole, right? As I was just mentioning, you take a conscious effort to make your entire home sustainable, right? From, as I mentioned, right, LED lighting, which came out years ago. I definitely still in plenty of homes, I see incandescent bulbs, right? So you could start there. In the kitchen space, you have a lot, obviously, cabinetry that's out there that's manufactured in a sustainable way. Yeah. Right? You have countertops now. We're seeing a lot of, obviously quartz has always had a high quartz content, low resin content, so they were fairly sustainable. Now you're seeing sustainable tops like cement. You're seeing, a lot of the new technology that's built in where it's a ceramic top, and that's really becoming big and popular. Of course, the faucets in the kitchen that become extremely, extremely sustainable. I mean, they have faucets out today that if you're cooking and you need a cup of water, you can tell it, I need a cup of water, and it will only pour
give you
a cup of water. Right? So at the end of the day, that's there. And then take it down to the appliances. Appliances today are running ridiculously efficiently. From the usage of whether it be electric, even the gas ones have technology built into them now where they're just using less and less energy. So the products are there no matter what room you're in, even bringing it down to a couch, right? Couches are made in sustainable manner today with sustainable products. So it really all depends on, again, the individual, where it starts and stops within their thought towards sustainability. But for the built environment, there is products for every room for sure.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about Duravit, I guess, because that's what you know best.
Sure.
And their products. What is Duravit doing with the materials they're using to try to focus on sustainability and longevity? Yeah,
well, listen, I've always worked for European companies. In my career as a manufacturer's rep, this is now going on 17 years after I got out of construction, the Europeans have always seemed to have a leg up on the Americans when it came to design, forward thinking, and even sustainability. So we as a manufacturer have been very, very conscious of how we manufacture our products. And when you think about ceramic, it is a little bit of I call it a dirty manufacturing process, right? You have a lot of breakages, you have a lot of reuse or non-reuse of the product. We crush a lot of our product up, put it back into the slip. So, originally it starts out as 4 components. It's kaolin, feldspar, quartz, and clay, right? Those are the 4 things that are in both liquid and dry form, gets crushed down, pulverized, mixed with water, poured into a cast, heated, extreme temperatures, thousands of degrees for 17 hours in a gas kiln, right? This is the normal process. So a lot of energy being generated to do that. And if you think about the manufacturers around the world in the ceramic space between Italy and the U.S., it's enormous, right? It's an enormous use of product. However, fast forward till today, and you have manufacturers, again, like us, we're reusing a large portion of our water. They have what's called a closed loop system today, where in the past, the water would have to go out into a system, get filtrated, try to use as much of it back into creating additional ceramic with it at least being clean enough where it doesn't kind of dirty up the ceramic process, right? So today there's a closed loop system where you're reusing just about all of your water. Wow. The only water that gets lost is what gets kind of soaked into the product. So at the end of the day, again, technology has come really fast forward. As a leader in ceramic design, and I say leader simply because we've been doing this since 1817. So we're 209 years nearly in making ceramic product. If we can't perfect that, then we shouldn't be making ceramics, right?
Well, so you've perfected it at this point.
We have. And one of the big things we've done is we've taken that initiative to continually become a better, more sustainable company, right? So we have 13 factories in 7 different countries. We've taken on the task of using a lot of what the Germans call photovoltaic, which to us is solar panels.
Yeah.
I think photovolaic's kind of cooler name anyway, but nonetheless, solar panels. So we're losing a lot of solar energy. We've actually made the conscious decision in some of the countries where our factories are very old, because, right, we're a 200 some odd year old company. We've closed some factories that were just beyond the ability for us to make them sustainable, right? So our goal by 2045 as a manufacturer is to be the first climate neutral ceramics manufacturer globally, and which is a huge task. So
across every factory.
Across every factory, exactly, right? We want to be able to qualify for that. So that's the goal, that's the end game. And for years, you know, our furniture, right? I mentioned kitchen cabinetry, right? As we sit here in front of kitchen cabinetry. So we have been producing vanities. So all of our vanities take a lot of wood, right?
Yeah.
Built environment, right? We're cabinetry, we're fixtures. So we are one of only, I think today, like 5 sustainably certified furniture factories. It's in Germany, it's in Scheckenzell, Germany. And we basically take all of our wood from a controlled forest, right? So at the end of the day, let's say it takes 2 trees to create 5 vanities. When we do that, we'll plant 20 trees behind that. So all of the wood that we take is from an area, from a single forest, that we're constantly ourselves reforesting and replenishing. So, you know, it's called PEFC certification. I forget exactly what the acronym stood for in general, but we're one of very few, and we've been doing that 15 years.
Okay.
You know, sustainability has really become top of mind today, where we're like 15 years of doing this and being involved in that type of process.
Yeah.
So,
no, it's great. It's almost like giving back to what you take.
Sure.
How does Duravit find that balance between modern and trendy design while keeping that sustainability part of things going? Because it must be tricky.
No, it is.
The trends change so quickly, and you have
Absolutely.
we have to change our designs on some of these sinks or some of these toilets, but we still need to make sure that.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing for us has always been design collaboration. So we have, for the past, since 1987, we collaborate with some of the world's most renowned industrial designers, right? From a product design standpoint. Of course, the core of the product, again, ceramic, right? It's got the 4 main components, and away we go. At the end of the day, it's about teaming up with the right designers who are also sustainably focused to keep the design constantly changing and moving forward. And then also designing, again, within a space where we're considered to be transitional, right? You have traditional, you have transitional, you have modern. Modern kind of comes and goes, right?
Yeah.
It's also a coastal thing. Tradition is, I don't want to say comes and goes, because they call it tradition for a reason. And you have that middle America part that is still very traditional, where transitional design, it could go in either direction. And that's what lends to the longevity of the design itself. And again, longevity of the product, thus becoming more sustainable. You know, the interesting thing, and I have this conversation a lot with designers too, when I'm at events, is that you know, Europeans travel with their kitchens and baths. It's the craziest thing ever. People are like, what do you mean they travel with them? When they move, if they do move, they take the cabinetry off the wall, they take the toilets off the wall, they bring it to their next flat, apartment, whatever, and they reinstall it. So that's why to them it's always been about longevity. How can we make or design a product that if I'm staring at it today, 50 years from now, I'm not going to hate it. So that's kind of always been Duravit's DNA, is let's create these transitional products that are sustainable and that can last a lifetime.
For 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah, should someone choose to. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you know, again, in my days in construction, which was the late 90s and early 2000s, I remember sadly ripping out bathrooms that were in beautiful condition. And they were built in like 1957. You know, or 47, whatever. I mean, I went into bathrooms where you say, wow, this thing's just perfect, immaculate, everything still works, but it was aged. You know, it had mauve colors or pinks or whatever, like all these weird colors that are kind of coming back from a design aspect. But at the end of the day, product is built to last. It all depends on the person, the initial design, and will they look to keep that much longer based on that.
All right, so you touched upon we're talking about longevity, I guess, and sustainability, and why is durability such a big part of sustainable design? I mean, why is it, when I buy my stuff, for instance, and I will openly admit I'm not as sustainably conscious as I should be. Although my house does have LEDs, I do have dual flushes, I have some of that stuff. But why should that longevity play such an important role? I mean, you mentioned in Europe they have their stuff for 40, 50 years, and that's not really the case, I guess, here in the U.S. But,
not at all.
But stuff lasts. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. My grandparents, when they sold their house about 10 years ago, they bought it in 62. Yeah. And some of the stuff was, like you said, perfect condition, just dated as hell. I mean, literally 50 years old. But it lasted. Yeah. So why is that durability such a...
Well, and when it comes to, the term longevity, and I don't think our parents, or our grandparents were thinking about the sustainability aspect of it. They just... When they purchased something, it really meant something to them, and they kept it forever.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I remember always the joke as an Italian, my grandparents had the plastic over the couch. Exactly. When my grandparents passed away, that couch was 70 years old. Take the plastic off, and it was pristine. Yeah. Absolutely. But the product itself was built to last a long time. And that's where I went back early in the conversation about today's consumer is a mix, right? It's those people who have that throw-out mentality, a little bit like my son and daughter-in-law, unfortunately, and those who, I want to spend money on something that's really beautiful and it's going to last me a long time, right? So, and it plays into the sustainability part, the durability, simply because in order to be sustainable, something needs to be able to last a long time. There are products out there, certification-wise, right? That's called cradle to cradle, and that certification is very difficult to achieve, and not many people do. And I'm hoping more and more products will go to that point, and that means the product's got to be able to, from the time it gets manufactured to used, to put back into the environment, meaning whether it be recycled, whatever it might be. It's just 100% sustainable. Duravit's working on a product right now. It'll be the first of its kind, a shower base that can be simply thrown into a recycling thing and then put under the dirt. It'll disintegrate and it'll just recycle itself, right? So that's the type of forward thinking, Duravit has, is how can we make something that'll last a long time, but when it is ready to be thrown out, it'll just be able to just disintegrate.
Throw it in the forest somewhere.
It doesn't matter, exactly. It could be put in a forest, could be put anywhere. So that's life cycle, that's, the ability to make a durable product. And I think what happens when, as a superior ceramics manufacturer, because of the way we process and create our products, they do last longer because they're more durable. They're less likely to chip. They're less likely to crack. So those are the different things that you need to consider when you say, hey, I want to build something that's going to last a long time. I want to pay a little bit more for something that's got, the ability to last that type of time.
Let's talk a little bit about modularity. And what I mean by that is the ability to create a sustainable bathroom and only need to replace parts at a time when you need upgrades or stuff like that. Because most people, you build your bathroom, you have it for 20 years or less now, as you're saying, it's coming down, and then you demo everything and you rebuild your bathroom again. But hey, if you just need a new toilet or you just want to upgrade your vanity and make it look a little more transitional, as you said, why not be able to do that? Yeah,
and you can. The great thing about a bathroom space, depending on how you set it up, right? And let's start in the shower. You have today what's called a universal rough valve that could go in the wall. A lot of manufacturers make it where, let's say today it's got a chrome trim with a certain style handle. You can 10, 15 years down the road change that out to a black trim with maybe a transitional or a modern handle, so you don't have to take the tile apart, open the walls up, whatever. Toilets, there it becomes real easy. If you have a floor-mounted toilet, 9 times out of 10, it's a 12-inch rough with a half-inch water line. Any toilet's going to fit that. for that, whether it be one-piece, two-piece, transitional, modern, you name it. If it's a wall-hung toilet, same thing. Wall-hung toilets is, you could change that toilet out all day long. The carrier's in the wall. It's got a push plate button to flush it, and that can be changed all the time. Faucets, same thing. Vanities, again, same thing. So there's a lot of product out there that you could really constantly update without ripping the walls apart. But what happens is you need to plan that properly, right?
Yeah.
Because maybe this tile today is in trend and it looks great and the metal's awesome and marble and whatever. 10, 15 years from now, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
So you want to think about consciously, what am I going to put on the walls? If it's just sheetrock, hey, then that's easy to change out, even if you had to. But between the paint, between the style of the stone, you really want to make a conscious effort to say, okay, this is done in a transitional way that if I decide to change out the toilet, change out the vanity, maybe change out the shower trim, the color of it, it's still going to look, I could leave everything else. And that's why I usually like to, even my own home, I design in a transitional manner. It's got some traditional aspects to it and some modern aspects to it, but that's where that transitional comes in the middle. Place.
All right, you mentioned, and I apologize for the phones ringing in the background. We are in a showroom.
Yes,
and
we are.
We'll plug DNV Home Design later. But you talked about, I think it was, would you call it cradle to cradle?
Cradle to cradle.
Certifications.
Yeah, certifications.
So what kind of certifications should designers be looking for? And even for that matter, stretch even to homeowners if they're looking for this type of stuff.
Sure. Well, and that's where, again, education comes into play, right? Today, you'd be absolutely foolish not to buy a WaterSense certified product. And for the most part, this is where the governmental thing comes into play, like with the EPA. They just basically outlaw the ability for manufacturers to sell product to the public that does not meet certain standards.
Okay.
One of the biggest ones is WaterSense. Cal Green is another one that's out there. And California always has its own extra aspect.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they're the dictator of water consumption, right? Yeah. So all of the low flow faucets and shower heads and toilets, for that matter, that we see today, it's all started in California and California law. And typically what happens is New York then adopts it, then like Miami-Dade County adopts it, then Chicago adopts it, and then slowly rolls and gets to Texas. That's typically the run. It truly is. It's doing this as long as I've seen that type of that aspect come into play. So that's what really dictates it. So WaterSense is the biggest one. Cal Green's another one. The Cradle to Cradle is a great certification. The sustainability factor on the furniture, that all has to do with how the furniture is made, where it comes from. Yeah. Like I said, all of our furniture is PEFC certified, so you can look for that. And I think, again, consumers are becoming more and more educated through online, right? It's just like this podcast is online. Yeah. You can find anything. And we're finding that people are truly searching for what certifications products do have. Yeah. AB 100 was another thing that recently came out. That was from a faucet aspect. Believe it or not, California found that even though a lot of faucets were technically low lead, right? There was no lead in the metal that makes up the faucet, but they were finding that there was enough high levels that when the faucet was used for the first, like say 100 times or whatever, it was just basically leaching out a little bit too much high levels of lead. Okay. So AB 100 gets passed by California, and all of the manufacturers globally had to begin to change their products and recertify them to meet that AB 100 standard, or else you cannot sell faucets in California. New York adopted it afterwards, so on and so forth. So those are the different things. And some of it, again, is a push from the EPA. Some of it is just a push from manufacturers themselves taking on the initiative to say, I'm going to make a better product that's more sustainable and better for the environment.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about helping designers make better choices.
Sure.
How can interior designers better educate their customers about making more sustainable choices?
Yeah. Well, again, the biggest thing is,
obviously the designers have to learn it
sure,
themselves.
is learning. It. Yes, absolutely. And look, I'm a huge advocate for continuing education credits, right, and units. I'm doing presentations for thousands of designers and architects throughout the year, right? Yeah. 50 at a clip, 40 at a clip. And that's really what it is them coming to the events where this information is easily digestible, whether it be even something like KBiz, right? All these big shows, they have usually talking points, and you could go and see and learn about these things. So it's more the education or the desire to be educated, right? The design has to do that. I myself personally, and others do, manufacturer reps, we will reach out to the design community and schedule these type of things, even do a lot of one-on-one education, because it does take education. Again, at the end of the day, you know, if you're using an interior designer, you're spending money anyway, right? And you can spend a lot of money depending on the designer. And if that designer needs to, you know, tell that customer, and let's say it's a high-end customer where, you know, you're redoing a bathroom at $250,000, let's say, and I've seen them. Now add 35% to that. You know, that's a lot of money. You're talking about, you're going to spend $75,000, $80,000 more on this renovation to be more sustainable. Well, you better be able to tell your client why. So it's really the designer, their goal is to, you know, reach out to people like myself, attend industry events. Again, you could research a lot of this information. Like if you just went online and put in, you know, who is the top sustainable ceramics manufacturers, Duravit would probably come up, you know, in that list. And then you could find out a lot of information there.
What about seeing actual product?
And of course, seeing the product is good, but it's hard to tell when you look at a toilet, is this thing sustainable, right? And a lot of that has to do to labeling. When it goes back to, is it WaterSense certified? Is it Cal Green certified? At least then you'll know that that particular product is meeting the goals or the criteria for that low flow. And you know, look, at the end of the day, a lot comes into that, because when you're changing a toilet from, say, you know, a 2-gallon flush all the way down to a 1-gallon flush, you're talking a lot less water, and it's got to be consciously done properly. And why I say this, and it's a little bit of a technical aspect, but it's called line carry, right? When you flush waste, it has to go a certain distance to get to either a septic tank or the sewer system, right? At the end of the day, when you have a pipe that was designed with a certain pitch to receive 2 gallons of water in order to move that waste all the way to the line carry to the street, the pitch is different. You know, if you're using less water, the pitch has got to be greater. So a lot of remodeling, when these new toilets are being installed, the contractor does need to, and the designer need to be conscious of making those subtle changes to the waste line, or else you're not going to get proper performance.
Sure, and I think that's important, because even if you're not going to make those sustainable moves now, as far as your toilets, you're saying, set yourself up for the future to have that.
Absolutely.
So make sure that pitch is great enough, like you said, where if you're going with a regular 2-gallon flush now, even when you get a 1-gallon in 5 years, your house can handle it.
Because at the end of the day, that's the key, is the line carry, right, and the performance of it.
Cool. So as we wind down, because we're getting a little bit low on time here, let's talk about the future. And I know you talked about, for instance, the new shower base Duravit's making, but what new technology are you, I guess you personally, because you're in this business, looking forward to that's coming out, that's on the horizon for both bathrooms, maybe kitchens, and all that, and even houses in general, if you know more beyond the Duravit world.
Just in, I mean, obviously, right, as I mentioned, I go all the way to a whole sustainable home, and I'm very conscious of it. But the new solar systems that are coming out today, you know, in the past it was, they were big, they were gaudy, they were ugly. Now you got technology. It's looks like a roofing shingle.
I think Tesla made that. It's insane where it looks like, it's crazy.
So that technology is advancing. Windows and doors technology has gone through the roof. The quality of a window today to keep hot temperature out, or hot temperature in the house, or cold temperature out, all of it's there. So it really begins to boil down. But if you think about, for me, what we do, one of the biggest things that we're doing today, which was a game changer for the industry, was we're building the world's first climate neutral ceramics manufacturing plant up in Matane, Canada. So first of its kind on a large scale level. We're using only electric kilns. As we know, right, the cities move from gas. Any new build has to be electric, because the ramifications of gas and natural gas. So we're the first manufacturer to take this on. And, you know, when I say first, truly the first of its size. There's a few electric kilns throughout the world that are very small, that can't produce much. this factory will be able to produce northwards of 500,000 pieces a year using nothing but electric, and it's actually powered by water. It's hydroelectricity that's pumped into the building. So it's 98.6% climate neutral. So we use about 0.4% energy from the earth to run this factory. And we've done that just, again, to set the bar, right? We've set the bar in way of how we make our ceramics. Now it's how we're mass producing our ceramics. So this, we hope, will be the leader, and other manufacturers will begin to come on to that. But we'll see that type of advancement in technology, from countertops to furniture to tile to lighting. It's all rapidly advancing, and fortunately, a lot of it moving towards sustainable manufacturing processes.
Yeah, do you think, and I'll ask your opinion on this one last question as we wrap up, do you think this is just sustainably conscious is just a trend, or you think it's here to stay?
You know, about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it became a little trendy. And I say that because it seemed to be, all of a sudden, there was this huge push. This huge push with LEED. You heard all these different certifications, whatever. But today, again, I go back to, so we do a lot of high-rise hospitality work, everything like that. The amount of influx of information that we're getting requested by architects and specifiers, when you see it to that level, you know it's something that's going to be here to stay for a while, because you have the architects and designers talking about it, you have manufacturers producing and talking about it, you have designers, and then you have the homeowners. So that's like the complete cycle. And the fact that we get requests for what's called today EPDs and HPDs, which is our environmental product declaration and our health product declaration, and these are basically forms saying that our product is good for the environment, and our product is also good for the health of the end user, which is super, super conscious today. I mean, we're doing a project, and we'll end on this example, with Harvard University up in Boston. And the architectural firm is Elkis Manfredi, and they had reached out to us and said, hey, we need your HPDs and your EPDs on your vanities, because our furniture that they're using along with our ceramics. And on like page 85 of one of our declarations, there was an area where we were using 0.5% formaldehyde in the glue, which actually dries, in the banding of the furniture edge of our drawer. And they literally said, nope, we are not going to use this product, because there could be a chance that that edge band could come off and the dry glue particles could go into the air and a student could breathe that. So very, very small chance. So they basically said to us, only way we do is if you find a different way to produce this. And we did. We actually found a different edge band producer who used nothing but water-based glue, and we changed to that. And that was something that was brought up by them. So that's how conscious today's architect is.
And you use that now, that glue
now
across
moving
everything.
Forward, that's it.
Wow.
You know, we say, okay, get it. All right, if this is an issue, then we simply change, and we do that moving forward. So when you see designers and architects at that level, I think that's when you know it's something that's here to stay, and it's beyond a trend or a buzzword, for that matter.
Cool. Well, thank you. First, I want to start off thanking D&V Home Design here in Northport for giving us their facility, this beautiful kitchen that we're in now. And again, as always, thank you, Dean, for not only chatting today, but I guess even personal thank you for helping me spearhead this podcast last year. So.
Yeah, this has been great. I really appreciate it. It's great to be back.